Mom collapsed. The sudden message from my daughter, Lily, hit me hard. I had divorced a year ago, and my 7-year-old Lily was living with my ex-wife, Susan. I received a call from Lily saying that Susan had gotten very thin and was now in the hospital. Lily, what's going on? I send $2,000 every month. Why is this happening? I asked. Daddy, please help Mom, Lily cried, hearing her heart break. I left work early and rushed to the hospital where Susan was admitted. I prayed for their safety as I took a taxi there. When I arrived, I found my crying daughter and my mother-in-law. Susan was lying in bed with her eyes closed, looking like she was asleep. How is Susan? I asked my mother-in-law. It's a mess. She's hospitalized for malnutrition. Pills are piling up, she replied. Malnutrition? She said she was on a diet and hardly ate. I told her many times to eat more. I can't believe she hadn't been eating properly until it came to this. Daddy, will Mom be okay? Lily asked. Yeah, she'll be fine. She'll rest in the hospital and we'll be back to normal soon, I reassured her. Really? Lily clung to me, shedding quiet tears, and a faint smile appeared on her face, maybe comforted by my presence. But I noticed something was off when I held her. Has Lily slimmed down too? I wondered. That's what kids are like during their growth spurts, my mother-in-law said. I deeply regretted not being aware of Susan's and Lily's well-being. I was the cause of our divorce. Back then, I was a busy salesman at a major corporation and hardly came home, leaving everything about the house and our daughter to Susan. I neglected my responsibilities as a husband and father, which made Susan so upset that she asked for a divorce. After that, Susan and Lily moved back to her parents' home, where her father and stepmother lived. They got married late in life, fearing loneliness in old age. Susan said she worried about being a burden by returning with her child, but her parents welcomed her warmly. Out of my own will, I sent them $2,000 every month, hoping they would live comfortably. Being too focused on work, I was the reason for our divorce, so I decided to do everything I could for them. After the divorce, our relationship wasn't bad. We often contacted each other, and I learned a lot about my daughter who had just started grade school. However, for the past 6 months, I have been so busy that I hadn't contacted my ex-wife. I wondered what had happened to Susan during this time. I was deep in thought as I looked at Susan lying on the bed, looking so thin. Isn't this a bit too much for a diet? I wonder why she wanted to lose weight so much. Well, who knows? Maybe she found someone she likes. She's still young after all, my mother-in-law said. James, you can go home. I'll take care of Susan, she added. I understand. I'll head home for today. It must be hard staying with her. How about you, Lily? Do you want to come to my place? Huh, really? I want to go with you, my daughter said happily, squeezing my hand. My mother-in-law quickly responded, I'll take care of Lily here. You're busy with work, James, and Lily needs to go to school. But Lily says she wants to go. I can drop her off and pick her up from school. You're busy and it's hard for you to take care of her. Plus, you don't even have custody, she reasoned, leaving me at a loss for words. I see. In that case, when Susan wakes up, could you ask her if she'll let me take care of Lily while she's hospitalized? Regardless of what you say, she's still my daughter, I said, apologizing to my disappointed daughter. I bowed to my mother-in-law and left. Looking back, I regretted not insisting on taking her home right then. Several days passed since Susan was hospitalized. One day after work, I returned home to find my daughter there. Lily, did you come here all by yourself? Daddy, she said, looking up at me anxiously. She was wearing the same worn-out t-shirt and dirty shoes as at the hospital, and her hair, seemingly tied by herself, was a mess. This was the discomfort I had felt at the hospital. Realizing it now made me feel like a failure of a father. I invited her in and offered her a cup of hot milk. Doesn't your mom buy you new clothes or shoes? No, it's not like that, Lily shook her head, struggling to explain. I've been working hard, sending money so you and Mom could live comfortably. Has it not been enough? Dad, that's not it. Lily looked on the brink of tears. I gently stroked her back, waiting for her to find her words. After a while, she took a deep breath and said, Grandma does mean things to me and Mom. She barely lets us eat. No way. Is that really true about Grandma? It's true. I'm okay because I get lunch at school, but Mom's always hungry. That's why she collapsed. And you know, Grandma goes out every night, and when she comes back in the morning, she always badmouths me and Mom. Since living with Grandma, Mom has been treated like a servant every day. Lily's words, shouted through her tears, hit me like a punch in the gut. Could my mother-in-law be the cause of Susan's malnutrition? If I had kept in contact, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Biting my lip in frustration, I felt a small, warm hand gently touch mine. Dad, don't cry, Lily said, her heart tightening as she bravely held back her own tears. With that, I decided to help my ex-wife and daughter. About a week later, I was contacted by the hospital about Susan's scheduled discharge. Normally, the in-laws would have been contacted first, but I had arranged with the hospital to prevent that. I had grown suspicious of my mother-in-law since she always prevented me from seeing Susan and barely let me talk to her during my visits. Moreover, she constantly called me even when Lily was staying with me. Hearing Lily's stories convinced me something was off with my mother-in-law, so I decided to take Susan directly to my house on her discharge day without letting my mother-in-law know. When Lily and I arrived at the hospital, Susan was there, thinner but with a much better complexion than when she was admitted. "Thank you for coming to get me. I'm sorry for the trouble," Susan said, her voice making my heart beat faster. I was so glad she was alive. As I breathed a sigh of relief, Lily rushed to hug her mother. "Mom, I'm so glad you're fine now." "Lily, I'm sorry for worrying you," Susan said. Watching their emotional reunion, I felt a lump in my throat, but I knew we couldn't stick around for my mother-in-law to show up. I quickly ushered them into the car and headed home. "Feels nostalgic," Susan said, relieved as we arrived at the house we had lived in together until a year ago. Watching for the right moment when she was calm, I broached the subject. "Actually, Lily told me something," I said. When I asked Susan about what Lily had said, Susan's eyes widened and she awkwardly averted her gaze. "What Lily said was true. After I divorced you and moved back home, my mother started treating me like a maid. Even when I started earning money from work, my mother took all of it. There were times she wouldn't let me eat because she said I didn't earn enough." "Why didn't you talk to me about it?" "How could you say that? I couldn't ask for help because I was the one who initiated the divorce. We hadn't been in touch recently, so I thought you found a new partner. I didn't want to interfere with that." "New partner? No way. Besides, didn't I transfer $2,000 to you every month? How did you fall sick if you're lying?" "I haven't received anything. I am sure the money was transferred just fine. It should be recorded in your bank book." "My mother took both my bank book and debit card. She told me that you stopped sending money a long time ago and that you found a new woman and had abandoned me." I was stunned. If only I had kept in touch more diligently, this wouldn't have happened. But it's too late to regret it now. "She also took my credit cards and used them without my permission." "But couldn't you have run away?" "If I did that, they would turn on my father who was left at home." "I can't leave my father alone," Susan choked up as she said this. My mother-in-law was a big spender. When Susan and I were still married, she would often come to us asking for money, but she was generally pleasant and kind, so I believed Susan and Lily would get along with her. However, the moment Susan moved back home after the divorce, my mother-in-law seemed to have turned into a completely different person. She didn't do any housework and went out every day, taking her frustration out on Susan and Lily when she ran out of money. My father-in-law is a quiet man who couldn't stand up to my mother-in-law, so he turned a blind eye to it. He didn't offer any help, and Susan just had to endure it. "But I let Lily suffer. I'm a terrible mother, aren't I?" "That's not true. The one at fault is entirely my mother-in-law." "I see. Thank you," Susan said as tears quietly ran down her cheeks. A few days later, I waited for the day my mother-in-law was out and headed to my in-laws' house. When I arrived, my father-in-law bowed deeply to me. "I'm truly sorry. I've done an awful thing to Susan and Lily." "Sir, I've heard about what my mother-in-law has been doing to Susan and Lily. I came here to help them." Upon hearing my blunt declaration, my father-in-law gradually started speaking. "I noticed what she's been up to, but I turned a blind eye. I became unable to speak because I grew scared seeing her change day by day. But I can't stand seeing my daughter and granddaughter get hurt anymore." From his trembling voice, his regret was palpable. He wished for the same thing I did, to protect both of them. "Sir, could you lend me a hand?" I asked him to keep an eye on my mother-in-law's behavior, where she went, what she did, how my $2,000 transfer was spent, and how Susan's credit card was used. Subsequently, I also began to investigate my mother-in-law. One day, I visited my in-laws' house with my ex-wife. As soon as Susan went in, I could hear a loud voice berating her. I quickly followed. "Pardon my intrusion, James," my mother-in-law said, ignoring my surprise. I turned to my ex-wife and asked, "Are you all right?" Susan trembled in fear. Rubbing her back, I turned my gaze towards my mother-in-law. She froze for a moment, then hastily said, "Oh, welcome. What brings you here so unexpectedly?" "I just dropped off little Lily at school. Thought I could come over to discuss some matters regarding Susan and Lily without having Lily present. Hope I'm not intruding." "Oh, a discussion about what, I wonder? As you can see, we're getting along quite nicely." Saying that, my mother-in-law tapped Susan's shoulder, causing Susan to clearly show her discomfort. Already seated on the living room sofa was my father-in-law. I pulled Susan close and sat down nearby. "I've been transferring money to Susan's account to help out even a little bit after our divorce. Is it true you are using up all the money?" "What? What money? I know nothing about it. Susan's probably trying to cover up her frivolous spending by blaming me. What a terrible daughter." As expected, my mother-in-law pretended not to know and even tried to shift the blame onto my ex-wife. She probably thought she could brush it off. But I exchanged a glance with my father-in-law, who quietly nodded. From here, the reprisal began. "That's odd. You said that $2,000 every month, but you told Susan that I stopped sending money and had abandoned her and our daughter, right?" My mother-in-law started trembling as I spoke those words. "Teeth, that's what I heard from Susan. I didn't have control of my bank books or cards. You took them all," Susan said. "I couldn't possibly know about it. Besides, you've been using my credit card too, haven't you?" "I've received the receipts." "What have you been using Susan's credit card and the $2,000 you receive every month for?" Our questioning made my mother-in-law shake her head, insisting she didn't know. Of course, we expected her to play dumb. In the midst of this, my father-in-law brought something out from the back of the room. "Stop lying." "What do you mean? Do you suspect me as well?" my enraged mother-in-law asked as my father-in-law pulled out a few photos. "So that's where you've been going every night. You seem to have a favorite host at the nightclub. It appears you've been having a grand time using James's money and Susan's credit card." "How did you?" My father-in-law and I looked into everything. Although we only had to follow you around since you were so careless, we figured out everything without much investigation. "What's wrong with using my daughter's money? I should be allowed that much. Furthermore, it seems that wasn't enough money for you. You've been tricking money out of widowed men like my father, almost akin to marriage fraud, haven't you?" "Shut up. It's the victim's fault for being fooled." My mother-in-law brazenly shrugged off the evidence. "I thought this man had money when I married him, but it turns out he didn't have much. Luckily, my daughter Susan has been a great contributor. Haha. Men at the local senior centers are so easy. All it takes is a soft voice to have them smitten." Hearing this, my father-in-law's jaw dropped. Susan and I were at a loss for words. "We're calling the police." "No, anything but that." At the mention of the police, my mother-in-law turned pale, but I went ahead and called them. "Why would you call the police? This isn't looking good for me." "So you're aware that what you've done is wrong?" "Just don't call the cops. I apologize for everything. Forgive me." "Judging from your attitude, it seems like you've done this before." "Don't worry, we'll have the police conduct a thorough investigation." My mother-in-law, pale faced and shaking, was taken away by the police officers who arrived shortly after. When it was all over, it felt like a weight had been lifted off our shoulders. I gave Susan a warm smile. With tears in her eyes, she gave me a gentle smile in return. Apparently, my mother-in-law was arrested on charges of marriage fraud, and several people are demanding she repay their money. Naturally, my father-in-law divorced her and sued her for the emotional distress inflicted on the family from her harassment. Susan also claimed $50,000 in damages for the misuse of her credit card. Of course, I'm also demanding she return all the money I transferred. My mother-in-law, who is now behind bars, doesn't seem to have an easy life waiting for her when she's out. As for me afterwards, I said to Susan, "Please marry me again. This time, I'll protect you and our daughter. I won't make you cry anymore." We had once led a misguided marriage life, but this incident made me realize the importance of my ex-wife. Hearing my words, Susan cried, thanked me, and held my hand tightly. Now our family is starting a new life. This time, I will protect this happiness thoroughly.